Communication. Betty Lou wrote this great title a while ago. Communication is communion. And it's true. And I started looking at it, and I told her a couple of days ago, I said, you know, there are some times when, you know, what I have to say just is right there, and I got a picture of it, and that's great. And there's sometimes it's just tough coming. I'm going, why is this one tough coming? I figured it out. So maybe I'll make some sense this morning. You never know. So I want to do two things. I want to first look at communication and communion. And then I want to look at, this is the piece that got me, I want to look at the various purposes of communication in different circumstances. That sounded good. Okay. So I started out by going to Webster's dictionary. Now I got to tell you, see, it's a big deal. I went to Webster's. Usually I go to Wiktionary or something like that because, you know, you get much more of these online dictionaries. You get everybody's interpretation. You get a lot broader picture of it and all of that. But I went to Webster, and Webster did a really good job. Communicate is to impart or inform. But I highlighted this in my notes. To join or unite. To participate in. Literally, it is to make common. In the best sense. So then I looked up communion, because it's obvious to you and to me and to everybody, communication and communion obviously come from the same root, okay? So what it says in Webster's, communion, the first definition, the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially when the exchange is on a mental or spiritual level. Okay. And second, the service of Christian worship at which bread and wine are consecrated and shared. So my first question is, how many of you had experience in a Christian church where communion was part of the process, if you will? So about half of us have some experience of that communion process. That's where I want to start today, because I realize that I look at that a little differently than some people do. And probably in at least one of the churches I spent time in my youth, I could be labeled a heretic because of the views I have of communion. But I thought I would get a little help. And so I went to Charles Fillmore and said, what did he say? Charles is the founder of Unity Church. And so I looked at what does New Thought say about communion. Because communion actually is a, can I say this? It's an old thought Christian tradition. It doesn't mean that it's not good. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have meaning. It just means that it is traditional for 2,000 years in the context of traditional Christianity, which saw and still sees God as somewhat separate from us, and that we're working really hard to get in God's good graces in one way or another. And that we're kind of at the effect of what God wills and doesn't will for us to do. And Unity and the New Thought churches think of it somewhat differently. Our first Unity principle, real simple, there's only one presence and one power as the universe and as my life, God the good, omnipotence. And the second, of course, is I am. That's me, that's us, we're it. Because if God is everything, we're not separate from everything, so we've got to be one with God. Now, can I pretend not to be? You bet. I'm good at that. I've been practicing. Okay. I'll tell you in case you haven't thought, don't waste your time. It's not fun. Okay. But I'm good at it. So, I wanted to see what Charles Fillmore and some of the New Thought people have to say about communion. And of course, it's much more in line with how I see things. So, a little historical background, by the way. Communion, sometimes called the Last Supper, was right before the crucifixion of Jesus. And it's when he sat down with his disciples, and they had their last meal together, okay? And so during this, and I'll read this, Charles Fillmore had a book called Keeping a True Lent. And I highly, highly recommend that book. And yeah, and he's got a lesson for each day in Lent and all of that. So on the Last Supper days, he quotes in there the book of Matthew, which describes the Last Supper, which has become communion. And he says, as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it. And he gave to the disciples, and he said, take, eat, this is my body. And he took a cup and gave thanks, and gave to each of them, saying, drink, for this is my blood in the covenant. And I have to tell you that there still are cultures in the world which consider Christianity to be cannibalistic. Because if you take this literally, and by the way, there are people who take this literally, and I don't have any problem with that, I'm just saying there are people who take this literally, and it means something to them, and it helps them on their spiritual path. There are people who take this literally and use it as a way to separate from Jesus, from the message of the Christian church. So just know that if you just take this on the surface of it, it's a little interesting. So we're going to go a little deeper. But I want to read a little more about what Charles Fillmore said. He said, the benefit of taking Holy Communion is the establishing of our acceptance of the Christ, whose coming we celebrate within our mind and our heart. So it's symbolically welcoming in the Christ. He says the bread used in the churches symbolizes his body or substance, meaning substance in the world, by the way. It's the embodiment of spiritual ideas or spirit manifested in physical form. So that's the symbology of the bread. He goes on to say that the wine used symbolizes his blood, something we consider life. The circulation of divine ideas in our consciousness, bringing forth in us the abundant, unlimited life of God. Makes total sense to me. Now, could I repeat that all on my own without having it written down? No. But it makes total sense to me. He actually finishes up that lesson with an affirmation. All of his daily lessons have an affirmation. God's pure life and substance are constantly renewing and rebuilding his holy temple, my body. I'll skip what divine science has to say. They had some good things to say about it too. But I'm going to go on. There's a little disconnect still between this whole bread and wine and body and blood and all that kind of stuff. So I went back to the Bible, because this is a Christian tradition. And it's, by the way, not unlike many other religious traditions. So I'm only focusing on Christianity because that was the roots of unity, but it's not different from a whole bunch of different traditions here. So I went back to see where this whole analogy of the bread and body and blood and wine came from here. John 6, Jesus is saying, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. Now, by the way, I have to kind of keep reading between the lines, because I think for me, what he's saying here is basically I showed up. I put on a body so that I could be of assistance. So I could help people wake up, to help people choose again, to help people see their life differently. And he went on, the next verse in there, it says, this is that bread which comes down from heaven, not as your fathers ate manna and are dead. He that eats of this bread shall live forever. By the way, manna from heaven, you know, when Moses was leading the people across the wilderness, every day they say, well, what are we going to eat? And this food, manna, literally came down from heaven. Right? So he's saying, it's not even like that. Nice miracle and all of that, but that's just feeding the body. This is more than that. And then in Matthew, there's a story in there. Jesus spent time, from time to time, in seclusion or fasting and getting away and all of that. And there's one time that he spent a lot of time out in the wilderness, and the devil, the world, okay? I mean, I want you to get, in the Eastern traditions, in India, Maya is the word for illusion. It's also the word for the devil or the trickster, which is what is called in the Native American traditions. So the devil for me is the world. I mean, it's what tempts us, isn't it? There's nothing out there that can tempt me, nobody, no thing that can tempt me more than, let's see, today. Yeah, a good chocolate bar, that'd be good. Okay, okay. So, and stuff. Stuff, a nice tie. I want to wear a nice tie today. That stuff, that's a temptation. I want a nice house. I want a house. Alright, so the devil, the world, came and tempted him and said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. Meaning, feed yourself. You don't have to be hungry out here. You can do anything you want to do. And Jesus said, it is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Now, in the Bible, and actually a lot of other traditions, I mean, I've often wondered, when I first heard this, I was growing up, in the Christian church, words out of the mouth of God. Okay, great, he must be up there just yammering away, okay? I know they wrote all this stuff down. Somebody must have told them this. Okay, maybe that's God. But as I have grown up and looked at other traditions, the mouth of God is actually fairly common symbology in a lot of different traditions. The mouth of God refers to the medulla oblongata, right there at the base of the skull, at the top of the spine. That's the part, if you believe in this stuff, that's where God or Spirit enters the body. The medulla oblongata is the flip side of the coin of the third eye. Okay? That's why all of the meditation, not all, a lot of the meditation techniques are about focusing, bringing your energy up to the third eye. We're actually opening up. If you can picture this for the moment, God energy comes in at the medulla, fills our body and builds our body. And what happens, like all things with gravity, they tend to sink. So I got all this wonderful God energy and it's all sitting down here on my butt. I know, some of us have that. Think of that as your storehouse. That's it. Now, there are traditionally 7 major chakras up the spine. And the lower 3 chakras actually are all of the worldly stuff. Dealing with survival and community and power and authority and all those kinds of things. Most of the world has their God energy sitting down there. And that's where our focus is. And one of the purposes of meditation is to actually bring that energy higher. To bring it up, to reawaken the upper chakras and to reconnect with the source of our God energy, of our God being. Now, you don't have to believe all of this, but some of you actually have some familiarity with the concept. Anybody ever heard of Kundalini rising?
Yes.
All right? Well, what happens is, it's just that energy finally gets free and says, oh, great, I got a free path. And what happens is we don't just lift off. You could. But usually what happens is we now have an open channel that goes up and down so that our energy can be used in any way as necessary in the moment. All right, so the mouth of God, what's the word that God speaks? Well, they'll tell you, yeah, love, there you go, that's it. But they'll tell you in the Hindu traditions, it's the word Om. Or the Christians, it's Amen. Same word, by the way. There is a word, there is a sound that is the creative sound. And so what it says here in John 1, in the beginning was the Word. Not the dictionary. Not the encyclopedia. In the beginning was the Word. And I don't care what you call that word. Love's a good one. See, it all means the same thing. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. Figure that one out. It's all God. There's only one presence and one power as the universe and as my life. God the good. Amen. Communion is just about reminding us of that. That's all. It's as simple as that. This body is the Word of God manifest in flesh. If I believed that and lived that, I would be a very happy camper all the time. All right, let's go back to communication. Remember I talked about communication. It's about joining or uniting and bringing things together and stuff like that, okay? So, in the world, I want to say that communication is one of our most powerful and most essential tools. In the world, I'm making this distinction. I'm going to go look somewhere else in a moment here, okay? But in the world, we have three components of good communication. We have a sender, in this case me. We have a receiver, in this case you. And then we have understanding, or sometimes called duplication. Now, why do I call it duplication? Because what you understand may not be what I am trying to convey. Duplication means you actually got what I am saying. Make sense? You have a sender, you have a receiver, you have duplication. And so, in the world, this communication process is a two-way process of reaching some kind of mutual understanding, of creating and sharing some kind of meaning, of bringing us back connected, connecting people or connecting places. But communication is all about bringing back together into one. So it's not only what you say that's important. It's what people hear or what they understand from what you say. I put this in the newsletter, and I thought I could say it. I never have been able to in my whole life say it without reading. I'm going to read it to you in our newsletter here. I wrote it in there. I know you believe you understand what you think I said. But I'm not sure that you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. So for me, another component of really good communication is the trading places of the sender and receiver on a regular basis. We've all had that experience where we have one designated sender and one designated receiver, and that's the way it is, right? Doesn't work. All right. Out of all of this, I hope that you're getting that worldly communication is based on duality. And the fact that we actually live in a world of duality makes it very, very important, but it's still, you need to remember that it's based on a system of duality, a belief in duality. So what happens here is you have a sender and you have a receiver, and they're separate beings, and the whole purpose of communication is to bring those separate beings back together into oneness. So I want to look now at spiritual communication, something we don't have a lot of practice with. Some of us have a lot of understanding of it. We don't have a lot of practice of this. Spiritual communication is based on on the premise of oneness. Spiritual communication is always about the first unity principle. So there's no convincing, no need to understand, there's no need to bring us all together in harmony and love and all that kind of stuff. In spiritual communication, there is only a recognition and a celebration of our oneness. By the way, what that means is not a lot to say. So my suggestion to me and all of us is if you have any sense of duality, any sense of separation, any sense of me and them, my agenda, your agenda, don't talk. Do your inner work. Do your inner work until you have removed any blocks within you to perceiving oneness. See, the truth is true whether I believe it or not. If I'm experiencing that it's not true, I have to go inside and say, what can I let go of that's keeping me from being willing to know that this is true? The focus of your communication, meaning whatever you talk about, whatever you communicate about, creates your experience. It's the third unity principle, you know, thoughts and words create. So whatever you are communicating in thought, word, or deed creates your experience. So when we focus on duality, how we're separate, how things are different, how that's not working, how that's not good, and all of that, what happens is we have the world. That's our experience. When we focus only on oneness, our experience is heaven. Another way to tell, by the way, what your focus is, if you have any belief at all in separation and duality, then there's judgment. Meaning, if you have any judgment, then there's a belief in separation or duality. And I have to say, although it's nice and it's holy and all that kind of stuff, judgments includes good stuff as well as bad stuff. That's the greatest. That's a judgment. Sorry. When you know only oneness, and you have only love, that's it. And we're big on prayer. So let's look at how we pray. See, I have to say, most of the prayers that I hear, and gosh, I wonder why I hear them if I'm saying them. I guess I do. Okay. So mine too. I'm just owning. Okay. I'm not talking about you out there and me up here. But most of the prayers that go around in this world are all about telling God how we want things to be. You know that, right? Fix this, please. We always have please because we're polite. Because God is going and He'll believe us, okay? But most prayers are saying, here's what I want to have happen, make it so. Oops, got my place mixed up here. Some, not a lot, but some prayer actually involves listening to God. So maybe we can learn how to respond to what already is. Now that's not as much fun. That means I have to somehow put up with all of this. Now, New Thought, now we have this great thing called affirmative prayer. Okay? And like a lot of things in New Thought, I actually believe that they have been misused, mislabeled, misidentified. They've been made much more palatable to the general public. So, New Thought, affirmative prayer, basically is we're busy being grateful that everything that we really want already is. I know, it takes a minute to soak in. See, affirmative prayer isn't asking for something. Affirmative prayer is saying it already is. I know it already is. All I have to do is wake wake up and see it. But most of people using affirmative prayer say, I already know what I want, it already is, and I'm going to wake up and so I can see it. You see the distinction is subtle, and it's a good move, but it's still not there. We're still telling God how we want life to be. Now, I don't have an answer, but one of the things I'm going to say is try a form of prayer that looks a little like praise and celebration for all that is, even if you don't understand it, even if you don't like it, even if it doesn't seem fair. Praise and celebration for everything that is. When we release our judgment is when we have an opportunity to see the love, to see the perfection in what already is. Yeah. So, I'll go out on a limb here and say that for me, the only true communication is I love you. The only true communication is I love you. No matter who you are, what you're doing, what you think, what you believe in, I love you. And I wrote a little reminder about 30 years ago and saved it up for today, by the way. Foresight. God was guiding me. Write this and you'll use it on June 7, 2015. And we have called this, over the years, a wedding song. And today I could call it a communication song. A true communication song. I'm going to be brave. And I'm going to try and sing it, and then I'll ask you to fill in. Yeah, you will. I know. It's very, very simple. I see you. I know you, I love you, I am seen, I am known, I am loved by you, I can love